Hi guys, it's Tracy. It's Friday, March 22nd, and I thought I'd do another lunchtime story time. Yeah, I am on my lunch hour, and it's kind of like, trying to figure out exactly what to say, where to start. I mean, I know where I left off on my last video. Again, let me put a little disclaimer out here that anything that I say in my, talking about my past, that's exactly what it is. It's my past. And so how I felt about somebody, or how the relationship was in that part of my life, may not be how the relationship is now. My mother and I are in a really good, a lot better place, a better relationship now. So is my sister and I. So there's a lot of things, though, from my past that may sound, may come across as ugly or hateful, or anything. But you must know that I have worked through those things, and we have a better relationship now. And I still feel that sharing my story is therapeutic to me, and may touch or help somebody else. I also want to say that anything that I say in what I've learned, or how I felt, or how I feel now, I'm not a doctor. I don't claim to be a doctor or a therapist or a counselor or anything like that. These are just my feelings, my thoughts, my memories. And it may not be the way somebody else remembers it that was involved. But these are my memories, and these are my feelings. This is my description, my story. So I left off the last video basically with that my mom had left the man that I always related to at that time as my dad. And she left for someone else, which he in turn left his family too. They both had their own families, and so they both divorced and then got together. So this man that my mom met, you may, people that know me know that I refer to him often as the evil stepdad, because I've had more than one stepdad. This man was in my life, or I should say married to my mother in my life for about 13 years. And I was just thinking about it earlier today when I thought about making this video. If I ever knew it, I don't remember it, as I don't remember my mom's wedding anniversary to this man. It might have been in February, also, the year before my sister was born. I told you that my mom had difficulties getting pregnant, and there was issues, and probably caused issues in her marriage to her second husband. But like 3 months within their relationship, or them getting married or whatever, my mom was pregnant, which brought my sister. Technically, yeah, she's my half sister, but she's my sister. She's 8 years younger than me. So I guess I was 6, almost 7, when my mom met this man. Turned 7 after they got married. No, turned 8. Anyway, something like that. I was 8 when my sister was born, and they had only been married about a year, I think, when my sister was born. And my sister was born in February. So, memories that I have from the beginning and throughout all of the time that my mother was married to this man, her third husband. Those of you that don't know, didn't watch the other video, my biological father was killed in Vietnam uh, 3 months before I was, almost 3 months before I was born. Well, this third husband, the evil stepdad, my sister's dad, real dad, in the early days, and like I said, everything throughout the whole time my mom was married to him, I remember always struggling, always feeling confused, conflicted as to what to call him. Because as I described, her second husband was my dad. Those are the memories I had from the time I was 1 to the time I was 6. For 5 years, this man was my dad. That's what I called him. We were a family. And then because he wasn't my biological dad, and he, for whatever reason, didn't adopt me, when my mom left him, he had no rights, and so there was no visitation, no visits, no. So this man was ripped out of my life, and then I was put into this other. Then all of a sudden there was this other man, and a sister. Within a couple of years, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to feel. Like I said, that was when my first taste of the of abandonment issues, trust issues, and I was confused and conflicted. I didn't know what to call this man, and I really didn't feel comfortable ever calling him dad or daddy, and later you'll understand even more why I didn't. There'd be times, moments I would, but it wouldn't last long, and it was more when I was really, really young. So my sister came along. I don't remember about any really bad memories then. But it didn't take long after my sister came along for the abuse to start. To be honest, I don't remember exactly how it started. The early memories are hard. It's hard to remember. But I do know that the abuse started about the age of 9 or 10, around in there. And this, my sister's father, he started paying a little bit more attention to me than he should have. Let's just put it that way. And I know it started with hugs, come sit by me, that sort of thing. But he was a self-employed carpenter, framer, whatever. He built houses, and he would have men that worked with him, for him, whatever. So he was self-employed. So when work was good, typically he was in a good mood. If work was hard to find, then he wouldn't necessarily be very nice. And the older I got, I also recognized that, and I know now too, he was an alcoholic. He pretty much would always have beer. And I always remember it being regular Coors. That was his beer of choice. That wasn't always what he drank later or when we were dirt poor, because he wasn't working. Because if he couldn't find work, if he couldn't find carpentry work, framing work, then, which I know now about, I understand now as an adult, I understand about self-esteem and men having problems when their self-esteem and stuff, when they're not bringing in the money, when they're not the breadwinner, and that sort of thing. I know men can struggle with that. And so I'm sure he dealt with those things, and then drinking on top of it, and depression. But he would take it, and so then all of that, he'd take it out on us. Primarily my mom and in myself. He would take things out on my sister some too, but that was his daughter, so basically that was with just yelling and spankings from what I remember. But and because of the way he worked and employment, we often moved. And you may catch me in my stories referring to or trying to remember when something certain happened and refer to a house or oh yeah, it happened at such and such house, because to some degree that's how I associate some of my memories, is where were we living. It had to have happened this year or this particular time because we were in such and such house. And I know we lived at such and such house between this time and that time. So that's sometimes how I correlate the memories of when it was in my life, how old I was or something, because I correlate it with where we were living and when we were living there, because we moved fairly often, because we would buy and we'd lose a house, we'd rent, couldn't afford it or whatever, and move again. So there was that sort of thing. I think I went to about 8 different schools my whole career, my whole life of education. When my mom was married to the second husband, the one that was my dad, I went to an elementary for kindergarten and first grade. And so then when she left and married my sister's dad, the evil stepdad, we were still in the same school district, kept me in the same school district, but I went to a different elementary for second and third. And we were in an apartment, 2 different apartments in the same complex, and then we got a house. Time frame for that I really don't recall, but I do know, and I think I went to that second elementary more so by using my grandparents' address, and I think that started when we lived in the apartments and just continued when we got the house. Because from that second elementary I could walk home to my grandparents' house because it was only a few blocks, and my mom would work off and on. My mom was a licensed beautician. That's what she went to school for, and so she would work mainly in this one salon she worked in that one salon for years, and she'd work off and on. I don't remember from time to time how long of periods she would work. I just know that when weather was permitting, I walked home to my grandparents when I went to the second elementary I went to. And then when we got the house, that's where, and my sister was born, and he added on to that house a game room and another bedroom. I had a stepbrother that lived with us for a while. And like I said, I don't remember a lot of bad things from that house. And so we eventually then, my sister was very young, we moved out to south into an area called Everman, which is just about 30 miles, I guess, from downtown Fort Worth. I personally, throughout my whole life, have never lived more than 30 to 35 miles in any direction from downtown Fort Worth. I was born downtown Fort Worth, and I've never lived any more than that 35 mile radius. I'm a Texas girl. And so we moved to Everman, and he had all these aspirations of, we bought a plot of land about, I think it was 7 acres, and it wasn't developed. We had to have, we had to basically, I was only like 10 years old, 10. And we basically had to do it all. Well, they did, the adults did. Clear off the land. There was a bunch of mesquite trees. Clear off the bulk of the land. We bought a double wide mobile home, had it put up. He built porches on the front and the back, built a garage / game rooms / and I don't think that thing ever got fully finished. We had to have a well dug, build a well house around it, have electricity hooked up, the whole thing out in the country. And I guess, times were good then. We bought all this land and did all this work, dug a pond. We had a neighbor fairly close to us on one side, right next door to their property on one side, and nobody on the other side of us directly. And we lived out there, I guess, almost 4 years. I went to an elementary for 4th and 5th grade when we first moved out there. And it was one of those new kinds of schools at the time where it was open concept. You didn't have walls separating the classrooms. You just had like shelves that were on wheels and stuff to divide the classrooms, where they could basically configure the classrooms in any way they wanted to. So at first, I was petrified. So you put into my sense of experiencing abandonment when I was taken away from my mom's second husband, confusion, confliction, and then changing schools. By the time, like I said, going into the 4th grade, that was my 3rd school. So I became, I guess, I don't know exactly what all the words for it are, closed off, protective of myself. I was very shy, very shy. It was hard to make friends. I was just very shy. I was pretty smart in school, but yet I wouldn't raise my hand even if I knew the answer, because what if I was wrong? Then I would be embarrassed, and I didn't want any attention drawn to me unless I knew for sure that it was going to be good attention. Then I didn't want any attention brought to me. So I hated to get up in front of the class and do any work on the chalkboard. I just became very self-conscious and very shy. And depending on what grade it was, depending on how easy or hard it was for me, because if I clicked with the teacher, then generally I, it wouldn't be so bad, and I could be more comfortable. And so my 5th grade teacher, she was wonderful. I still remember her name, Mrs. Brinkley. And later on, as I got older, a year later or so, her husband even drove the school bus that I had to ride. Because we lived out in the country, so I had to ride the bus. Which was the reason why I went to my 4th elementary. They decided to change the guidelines, the district boundaries. And if you rode the bus, if you lived more than such and such amount of miles from the elementary, Well, they decided they were going to bus you to a different elementary. So we didn't even move. It wasn't even my fault. I had to go to a different elementary for 6th grade. Just one freaking grade, 6th grade. Went to a different elementary. So, during all this time of trying to get used to the schools, get used to living out in the country, riding the bus, which was also very hard because being shy and self-conscious. Sometimes we had to ride the bus with older students, and they were mean. They didn't want the little kids, sitting by them or around them. So it was always, stressful and create anxiety as to where I was going to sit on the bus. So pretty much almost every day I experienced some form of anxiety because I was so shy, and at different times having to ride the bus with older kids. Where was I going to sit? Was I going to find a place to sit? Who was I going to have to sit by? Were they going to be mean to me? So dealing with all the normal, I guess you could say normal childhood things of like that, when we moved out into the country, that's when the abuse started to increase. So I was dealing with that at school, and then at home, dealing with the fact that I didn't know whether or not what my stepdad might do to me that day. I've learned, and I don't blame myself. I never really truly blame myself, but I went through the cycles of it. But it wasn't my fault. I was just a kid. He was supposed to be somebody that I could trust. He was supposed to be my parent and take care of me and provide for me, nurture me. And so was my mom. She was my parent. She was supposed to take care of me and protect me and nurture me. And so when you have somebody that's supposed to be your parent, basically, as I say, turn on you and do things to you that no one should ever do to a child, you get totally confused and lost and broken, and you just don't know what to do. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know. I look back on it sometimes, and not only was I physically frozen sometimes when he would do certain things to me, I literally couldn't move. I didn't know what to do. I was literally frozen in fear because I knew how ugly and violent he could be towards my mother, and how threatening he had been at times with me. He never hit me. Sometimes I wish he had. Sometimes I think I could have recovered from physical beating abuse a lot. I could have recovered better from that. Easier, faster. But he chose to do the beating and the hitting and all that. He did that to my mother. My mother eventually became the typical battered wife. She believed she was nothing. He made her believe she was nothing, that she couldn't make it without him. He was number one, let me tell you. You talk about narcissist. He was number one. He was also jealous of my relationship with my grandparents on my mom's side. My sister basically had to grow up in the atmosphere of hearing that I was the favorite. My grandparents treated me differently. They favored me, and all of this. My sister grew up hearing that kind of BS often. And because my grandparents, I know my grandmother, specifically didn't like him very much. They were very disappointed, I think, in my mother, in having an affair and leaving the good marriage, from what I, don't know for sure, good marriage, to this, and everything, and this whole dynamic of what they did, leaving both their spouses. And my grandparents were pretty disappointed, I think. And so he never had a good relationship with my grandparents. So there was this jealousy of me, and so there was this control thing that he thought I guess he needed to have over me. And he chose sexual abuse in order to have that control over me. And so when we lived out in Everman those years, the abuse escalated, and I began to live in fear and anxiety and depression. And I don't know if there's a need to go into detail with what he did. There was never any actual intercourse, sex, whatever you want to call it, penetration. There was never, that never happened. But there was plenty of other things. And you don't have to penetrate somebody with just your sexual organ. Let's put it that way. And I don't remember the exact, I think it was after we lost the house in Everman. And we moved to a rent house back close to where we lived before. So I went back to my first and old school district when I was in junior high. I started 7th grade out in Everman, and I think we had a month left of school. Imagine that. A month left of my 7th grade year, junior high, having to get used to junior high and all that crap, and then I got to change schools again. And I've spent the last month of my junior high year, or 7th grade year, back with kids I went to school with in my first part of elementary, because I begged my mother, if we got to move now, let me go to a school where I know people. And she did, or I did, that last month of 7th grade. I didn't know it at the time, but that first week of going to that new school, the last month of my 7th grade, when we had to move again, had to change schools again. Even though I was going to a school with people I somewhat knew, a couple of them I kept in contact with, I still felt, everything. There's the fear and the anxiety and depression. I didn't know it at the time what I was dealing with, but I remember that first Friday, it was the first week I went to that school, and by the time Friday rolled around, I had a breakdown, per se. I didn't know what it was at the time. I didn't understand it, so I didn't know how to explain it to anybody. And of course, I couldn't tell anybody what was really going on at home. And I didn't know how to connect anything. But that first Friday, the first week I went to that new school, the last month of my 7th grade year, I remember not wanting to get out of the car. Just having this feeling of, I don't even know how to describe it. And I'm sure it was anxiety and depression. But I didn't know what it felt like. And I remember going, and I'm pretty sure it was my first period class, and I sat in the very back, thank God. And I think at the very back. And I don't remember what brought it up. Nothing probably did have to bring it on. But I started crying. And I couldn't stop. And I didn't know why I was crying. And I guess, I don't know if the teacher saw me. I really don't remember. Or if I had to go up to the teacher. But somehow I got up enough nerve to tell the teacher. And I just told him, and I don't remember, I think it was a lady. I just told her that I didn't feel good. And she sent me to the nurse's office. And I just told him I didn't feel good. I don't even remember what excuse I said. I don't remember if was my stomach hurt or headache or what. I don't even remember what I told him, but I remember that all I could say was I didn't feel good. But all I wanted to do was cry. And I remember my mom coming to get me, and all I remember is telling her that I didn't feel good. Looking back on it now, I think I just couldn't handle anymore right then, that week, that day. I was too overwhelmed, I think. The anxiety of it all. I ended up finishing my 7th grade year at that school with people I knew. But because of where we lived, when I started 8th grade, I had to start at a new school. Another new school. And we lived in a rent house, I think. And then eventually, I don't know if we ever bought another house. I really don't know. It was none of my business. But after Everman and moving back to the mid-cities area, I really don't remember which houses we owned versus rented, really, right now. So, the abuse was happening throughout those years of living out there in Everman and then coming back to the mid-cities and junior high. The abuse continued. It wasn't, I don't remember there being like a certain schedule. I never knew when it was going to happen. I know that I tried my hardest never to be alone with him. During this time, of course, losing that house and things, him being abusive to my mother increased, and his drinking increased. So, I remember I was in junior high at this new school. I don't remember exactly when it happened or anything, but, I don't remember exactly what grade I was in. It had to have been 8th grade, probably. That was the first time I ever tried to tell my mother. I wrote her a letter. Now, before I get into that, I don't recall my mother ever being very touchy-feely. Now, these are my memories. Like I said, these are my memories. These are how I remember things. I don't remember my mom being very touchy-feely. I don't remember, curling up next to her on the couch a lot, or, sitting in her lap. kisses and hugs and affection and all that. I don't remember there being a lot of that. So I didn't grow up with a lot of reassurance as to, little girls are supposed to be told they're beautiful by their dads, and you're a princess or whatever, or you're beautiful, you can be anything you want to be, all of the nurturing things that especially a dad or your parents are supposed to do. I don't remember. I certainly didn't have that from the stepdad. I remember being told I was smart because I got really good grades, but and talk, like, what are you going to do? I never knew what I was going to be when I grow up. I'm 50 years old. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So I was too busy just trying to survive in my own head. My future consisted of getting out of the house and having my own family. That's what my dreams consisted of. That's what my future looked like. Just to get out of the house. Get out of that house. So I wrote her a letter and I left it. I remember leaving it for her in her bathroom. I remember us going somewhere as a family, somebody's house. I don't remember why we had 2 cars there, but we did. And I don't know if this is the exact same day or not. But I was more or less made to ride home with him. And he had a little talk with me. And of course turned it all around. It was my fault because I had hurt my mother. I don't remember any threats. I don't even remember really what he said. Except for the fact that why would I do something like that? And I guess how hurt my mother was. I really don't remember what he said. I just remember it happening. And my mother never said one word to me about it. Not one word. Nothing was done. Nothing changed. She said nothing. She did nothing. Now, of course, I know now as an adult, going through my own counseling and recovery and a lot of other things, my own self-discovery, reading, my mother was going through her own crap. She was an abused woman. She was married to a narcissist, alcoholic, pedophile, liar. Whatever you want to call him. He's all those things rolled up into one. So I don't know what he told her. I know a lot of it, some down, I didn't like him, so I was making stuff up, that sort of thing. I'm sure. And I'm sure he reminded her that if she tried to leave, how was she supposed to make it on her own with 2 kids, just being a beautician? She'd have to go home and live with mama and daddy. I'm sure those kind of things were thrown at her, because he had her believing she was nothing and could be nothing, do nothing on her own. So she chose to believe him. Or she chose to stay stuck in her own fear. That she couldn't even do anything to help me. So I grew up with abandonment, anxiety, depression, confusion, abuse, and neglect. That's a lot. That's a lot for a child to deal with before they're even 13 years old. And I think that's where I'll end it today. There's more, because I'm still here. There's more to my story. And by the way, I'm liking my makeup today. My lipstick's starting to wear off. But I like the way my makeup turned out today, so I'm glad I decided to. That's another, I guess, I don't know, another reason I did the video. Not really a reason I did the video, but I like the way my makeup turned out today. Shout out to Jeffree Star, the alien palette on my eyes, and unicorn blood on my lips. So, yeah. And I have gone through different therapies, counseling, programs through the church, through my church, recovery programs. I've gone to, I think it was mainly just about 2 years, maybe longer. I went to Al-Anon, which is a 12-step program in conjunction with AA. That is for the family or friends or relatives of someone that was an alcoholic or is an alcoholic. Could be active or recovering or anything. So I did go to Al-Anon for a couple years. I've read books on my own. So just over the years, I've done a lot of things to recover, and to grow, and to improve, and to change, to learn to take responsibility for what was and is my part. And that comes more with what I did when I was an adult. Because when you develop coping skills as a child to deal with what you're going through, those coping skills don't always work when you're an adult. You can't just go in your bedroom and hide out and play music and forget the rest of the world when you're an adult. That doesn't always work when you're an adult. Lashing out at people and holding resentments and grudges and things like that doesn't necessarily work as an adult either. So those are other stories for another time. It's a beautiful day. in North Texas. A spring day. I think we're supposed to have a little bit of rain off and on this weekend, but it's supposed to be pretty nice. We're going to be doing stuff around the house, I think, this weekend. Both of our kids that had stuff stored in our garage, both of them got apartments in the last 2 weeks. So we have to rearrange our garage and get things straightened up to where at least hopefully I can get my car back in the garage. And eventually, hopefully before too long, we'll get both cars back in the garage. So hope to just do some, spring cleaning, straightening, just some stuff around the house. We do go to Arizona next week. Next Wednesday night we fly out, so got to get ready for that too, visit my in-laws. So, there's always plenty going on. I'm busy at work too, but it's a good busy. This has ended up being a lot longer video than I thought it would be. If you've listened or watched the whole thing, I appreciate it. If you want to reach out, say something, ask a question, comment, there is a comment section down below on YouTube where you scroll up past the other videos and then down towards, keep scrolling towards the very bottom. There is a part where you can comment. And if I post this on any other platform, you can comment me, reply back, or whatever. I appreciate any feedback that you want to give, and appreciate your time and watching my videos. I do all kinds of content on YouTube, so it's just my channel. It's just my story. It's just my life. And so I've learned, I'm still learning to take care of myself, and you take care of yourself too. So that's a dose of me.